Chosen one, hear this with reverence. Your arrival here is not coincidence, it is divine appointment. You were led to this moment by the unseen hand of God, timed with precision, aligned with purpose. What unfolded this morning did not pass quietly in heaven. It was noticed, marked, recorded. And now, in this hour, this kairos moment ordained before you were formed, revelation is being released. You stand on the threshold of a supernatural shift, one that could unfold today, tonight, or in the coming hours. The Lord has positioned you here because the action you thought was small has stirred something eternal. Even now, heaven leans in. The atmosphere around your life is changing. Your obedience, your rising, your perseverance, it carried more weight than you realized. Remember what is written in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 3. The vision awaits its appointed time. Though it seems delayed, it will not lie. It will surely come and will not delay. This is that appointed time. This is that divine hour. Anointed one, prepare yourself. What you did in silence has activated movement in the spirit. You are stepping into alignment, body, mind, and soul, with heaven's timing. The transformation has already begun. Chosen one, listen closely. Because what you stepped into this morning was not routine. It was not autopilot. It was not just another sunrise. It was a divine intersection, an appointment written long before you took your first breath. You didn't simply wake up. You crossed a threshold. A moment where heaven leaned forward and hell stepped back. A moment where the unseen realm reacted to a simple movement that looked ordinary, yet carried supernatural weight. I want you to hear this with spiritual clarity. This morning was a kairos moment. A moment where the appointed time and the prepared heart collided. It didn't matter that you felt tired. It didn't matter that you didn't feel strong. What mattered was that you said yes, not with loud praise, not with emotional fireworks, but with obedience. And heaven honors obedience more than performance. Let me tell you something from experience. I've had mornings where dragging myself out of bed felt like carrying a mountain. Mornings where my body rose but my spirit lagged behind. Mornings where fear whispered that I was forgotten. Yet every time I chose to rise anyway, something shifted, not around me, but inside me. It was like a whisper from God saying, I never asked you to feel strong. I asked you to keep going. And that was enough. Anointed one, what you did this morning was more than movement. It was resistance. It was defiance against despair. It was the quiet roar of endurance. You may have felt weak, but in the courts of heaven, your rising echoed like thunder. There is a law in the spirit, old as creation itself, and it says that small beginnings carry large destinies. It says that moments that feel insignificant often bear eternal consequence. It says that God watches the secret places, the hidden battles, the quiet yes. And this morning, that is exactly what heaven saw in you. I know life has stretched you. I know the weight has been real. The bills, the heartbreak, the disappointments. The mornings where prayer felt like a whisper through clenched teeth. The nights where sleep didn't bring peace. The loneliness that you carried, even when surrounded by people. The doubts that you buried so no one else would see. And yet, you rose. Chosen one, I need you to understand something deep. This wasn't about the physical act. It wasn't about getting out of bed. It was about getting out of resignation. You rose against hopelessness. You rose against despair. You rose against the thought that nothing will change. And when you rose, you activated something. When you inhaled, heaven exhaled strength. When you turned your feet to the floor, angels turned their attention toward you. When you pushed through the weight, the atmosphere began to shift. You didn't see fireworks. You didn't feel energy. But the spiritual realm trembled because the enemy expected you to stay down. He planned for you to remain in silence. He wanted your first thoughts to be defeat, So your entire day would bow to discouragement, but instead, your rising sent a message: I still believe, I still belong, I still refuse to quit. That is spiritual warfare. And hear me, with that one act, you stepped into alignment. Alignment with divine timing, alignment with a supernatural shift, alignment with a financial transfer that has already been written in heaven's books with your name on it. I'm not speaking metaphorically, I'm speaking prophetically, because heaven responds to movement. Heaven responds to obedience. Heaven responds to resilience. You may not feel like a warrior, but warriors are not defined by how loudly they shout. They are defined by how persistently they stand. And yes, what you did this morning shocked the enemy, but more than that, it surprised heaven. Now listen closely. I'm not saying God was unaware or caught off guard. What I am declaring is this: even heaven celebrates when a chosen one refuses to surrender. When someone who could have stayed down rises anyway, the Most High delights in your endurance. He rejoices over your resilience. He honors your persistence, because it reveals where your trust lies. There is a passage, written in the ancient words of Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3, that speaks of appointed time. It says that vision may linger, but it will not delay. It will arrive exactly when it is meant to. And this morning, without realizing it, you stepped into the timing of that promise. Your rising was not just survival, it was announcement, not just effort. It was worship, not just habit, it was holy. And the reason this matters is because heaven records the moments the earth ignores. The world sees exhaustion, heaven sees endurance. The world sees slow steps, heaven sees spiritual momentum. The world sees bedsheets and alarms. Heaven sees altars and offering. Chosen one, you must internalize this. Heaven reacted, hell retreated, your spirit ascended. And that is why you are listening to this message right now. Not because of coincidence, not because of scrolling, not because of timing on a clock, but because you stepped into a shift. And that shift, though silent, was seismic. This is where I pause, because part 2 will reveal what your rising activated and why heaven has now positioned you for a supernatural transfer. Chosen one, now that you understand heaven responded to your rising, you need to understand what it set into motion. Because what happened this morning did not end when you stood up, it began. It initiated a shift in the unseen realm, one that is already unfolding in your favor. I want you to hear this with spiritual seriousness. You triggered a sequence, a divine chain reaction. You set off alarms in heaven that signaled readiness, and alarms in hell that signaled defeat. You may not feel it yet. You may still feel tired. You may still feel uncertain. But in the supernatural realm, something has already changed. There are moments in life where breakthrough arrives loudly, with fireworks, with clarity, with instant transformation. But more often it begins quietly. It begins with a breath. It begins with a choice. It begins with a whisper of surrender. And that's what your rising was, surrender. You surrendered despair. You surrendered fear. You surrendered the lie that said, nothing will change. The moment you chose to rise, heaven marked you, not as a struggler, not as a survivor, but as a contender of destiny, a carrier of purpose, and yes, someone positioned for divine transfer. I know transfer is a word people throw around lightly, but I am not speaking casually. A spiritual transfer is not about sudden money falling from the sky. It's about alignment. It's about stepping into opportunities that were once blocked. It's about doors that were closed beginning to open. It's about resources shifting toward you, not because you chased them, but because they are assigned to you. And this is where the prophetic meets the practical, because the supernatural does not ignore reality, it invades it. Your rising this morning was more than a feeling. It was a sign that you are ready for responsibility, ready for stewardship, ready for elevation. Ready for increase, not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually, relationally. Chosen one, let me be vulnerable with you. There were seasons in my life where I thought breakthrough meant everything around me changed. The job, the money, the relationships. But what I eventually learned was this: the breakthrough began when I changed. When I started getting up in the morning with intention. When I shifted from resentment to gratitude. When I stopped waking up with dread and started waking up with expectation, even when I didn't feel it yet. Expectation doesn't mean understanding, it means readiness. And that's what heaven saw today, readiness. Your rising told the spiritual realm, I am ready for more. I am ready to heal. I am ready to step into purpose. I am ready for divine timing. And heaven responds to readiness. You see, the supernatural realm is structured. It honors laws. It observes timing. It respects obedience. And the moment your spirit aligned with willingness, something began to move on your behalf. It may show up as a conversation that suddenly shifts, an opportunity that unexpectedly appears, a door that previously felt locked, suddenly opening, a burden, lifting clarity, arriving confidence, returning favor, increasing. Or maybe it will show up quietly at first, in the form of peace. I have learned through my own journey that peace is often the first sign of breakthrough, because before heaven gives you what is in your hand, it settles what is in your heart. And today, you took the first step toward peace, even if you didn't feel it yet, because peace follows obedience, and obedience begins with simple decisions. Think of the farmer. He sows seed not because he sees the harvest that moment, but because he trusts the season. That is what you did. You sowed into your morning. You sowed into your day. You sowed into your future. You sowed into your calling. You planted something. And heaven is obligated, by covenant, by promise, by divine law, to respond to seed. The passage in Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3 speaks of delay and appointed time. It tells us that some things will feel slow until suddenly they are not. The moment of arrival often comes disguised in ordinary moments. A text, a call, a small decision, a simple rising. This is where many miss it. They expect breakthrough to come as lightning. But lightning strikes after pressure builds, after clouds gather, after alignment occurs. Pressure precedes power, delay precedes delivery, obedience precedes overflow. So when I say this morning mattered, I am not exaggerating. You aligned with a moment that was already scheduled. You said yes to a shift you did not see coming. And because of that, something has begun that you cannot undo and the enemy cannot stop. Let's go deeper. There is a reason hell fought your morning so viciously. There is a reason you woke up feeling heavy. There is a reason fatigue hit you before your feet touched the ground. The enemy knows that mornings are gateways. The beginning of your day shapes the trajectory of your hours, your mindset, your momentum. If he can steal your morning, he can steal your progress. If he can sabotage your first thoughts, he can choke your faith before it breathes. But you blocked the sabotage. You rose anyway. And that one decision was a declaration. My story is not over. And when a chosen one declares that, everything shifts. Right now, heaven is preparing resources, aligning timing, repositioning opportunities, strengthening your steps. You may not see the results yet, but the shift is underway. And this is where I pause again. Chosen one, now we step into the mystery that most people never discern, the kind of transfer you triggered. Because not all transfers are the same. Some are financial, some are relational, some are spiritual, some are territorial, shifting you into spaces and circles you were once excluded from. Some are mental, unlocking clarity, wisdom, and discernment. But the most powerful transfers begin internally before they manifest externally. Heaven does not hand resources to someone whose mindset is still enslaved. It prepares the mind before it releases the mantle. And this morning was evidence that your mindset is transitioning. You pushed past emotional fatigue. You pushed past spiritual resistance. You pushed past mental warfare. And that kind of resilience reveals readiness, not to receive scraps, but to steward abundance. Now listen carefully. There are 3 primary types of divine transfer that you activated. 1, a transfer of strength. 2, a transfer of authority. 3, a transfer of positioning. Let me break these down in a prophetic yet practical way. The transfer of strength comes first. This is when heaven replaces self-reliance with supernatural empowerment. When you rise, even when you feel empty, the Spirit fills you in ways no motivational speech ever could. The strength I'm speaking of is not adrenaline or willpower. It is the strength that carried David when fear was real. It is the strength that helped Esther stand before a king. It is the strength that carried Joseph through betrayal, imprisonment, and elevation. It is the kind of strength that doesn't look loud. It looks consistent. It shows up again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. You tapped into that strength this morning. Second, the transfer of authority. This is where it gets deeply spiritual. When a chosen one rises in faith despite fatigue, they step into a level of authority the enemy cannot negotiate with. This is not the authority of titles. It is the authority of alignment. Authority shows up when you speak, and peace follows. When you pray, and the atmosphere shifts. When you walk into rooms and carry influence without demanding it. Heaven entrusts authority to those who endure, not for ego, but for impact. Your rising was the evidence that you are ready for responsibility, and authority always follows readiness. Finally, the transfer of positioning. This is when divine orchestration begins. Suddenly, the right people notice you, the right opportunities approach you, the wrong doors close, not as rejection, but as protection. You may see small signs at first, clarity in decisions, unexpected encouragement, a sense of timing that feels guided. This is positioning. Heaven is not random. It places you where your purpose can flourish. Chosen one, I want to share a personal moment with you. There was a season in my life where I felt completely unseen, faithful, but overlooked. I kept getting up. I kept moving forward. I kept showing up, and nothing seemed to change. But what I didn't know was that heaven was preparing positioning long before manifestation. When the moment came, doors opened so quickly it looked sudden, but it wasn't sudden. It was scheduled. It was the result of 1,000 mornings where I rose in silence. And the same pattern is unfolding in your life. You may feel unnoticed. You may feel behind. You may feel unseen. But the heavens have seen you, and you are being positioned. And now we must talk about something most people avoid: the supernatural resistance that reveals your elevation. Chosen one, the warfare you fought this morning was a clue. Pressure is always greatest before breakthrough. Resistance intensifies before release. The closer you are to alignment, the harder the enemy pushes back. Why? Because hell fears momentum. It fears discipline. It fears perseverance. It fears consistency. A chosen one who keeps rising is unstoppable. The goal of the enemy is not to destroy you instantly. It is to weary you slowly. To convince you that rising doesn't matter, to make you believe your effort is unnoticed. But heaven has already revealed the truth. Your rising mattered. It was seen. It was recorded. It was honored. And here is the part most people miss. The spiritual realm responds not to volume, but to endurance. Not to excitement, but to obedience. Not to perfection, but to persistence. This is why your rising was so powerful. Because you rose without applause. You rose without guarantees. You rose without clarity. You rose without emotional strength. And those are the mornings that rewrite destinies. And now, because of that obedience, you are stepping into transfer. Not crumbs, not leftovers, not delayed promises, but supernatural allocation. Heaven does not reward convenience. Heaven rewards consistency. And you have been consistent even while exhausted. So let me speak this plainly. What is coming next is not luck. It is not coincidence. It is not random. It is recompense. It is response. It is reward. And yes, it is transfer. Chosen one, now that you understand what your rising triggered, we must move into something crucial, discernment. Because a divine transfer is not always loud. It is not always dramatic. Heaven often moves in whispers before it moves in wonders. And if you don't know how to recognize the signs, you may mislabel the beginning of your breakthrough as coincidence, or worse, as chaos. So hear me clearly. When heaven is shifting you into supernatural transfer, the signs rarely look like comfort at first. They often look like disruption, realignment, unsettling, but not to break you, to position you. Here are the first signs. A transfer has begun. 1. Old cycles stop responding the same way. Things that once drained you no longer hold the same power. The opinions that once paralyzed you now feel small. The habits that once consumed you begin to feel uncomfortable. This is the Holy Spirit detoxing your spirit. It is the pruning before promotion. 2. You feel the tension of not yet, but no longer. That strange space where you don't fit where you were, but you aren't yet where you're going. That is not confusion, it is transition. It is the stretching of capacity. When heaven promotes a person, it expands their inner world before it expands their outer one. 3. Unlikely peace. Not the peace that comes from solved problems, but the peace that makes no sense at all. The kind that shows up when logic says panic. The kind that whispers calm in places you once felt chaos. That peace is a marker of presence. 4. Resistance increases. The closer you get, the greater the pressure. The enemy does not resist mediocrity, he resists momentum. If the warfare around you elevated, it is because the calling on you elevated. These are not random, they are the signs of supernatural sequencing. Like it is written in the prophet's words, vision awaits its appointed time, though it tarries, wait for it will surely come. That is not poetry. That is divine timing. When the transfer is scheduled, nothing can steal what God has aligned. But I want to take you deeper than just signs. I want to teach you recognition, the art of seeing heaven's fingerprints in the details, because sometimes the first sign of transfer is not a deposit, but a disruption. You may notice relationships shifting, environments feeling too small, or routines losing their grip. This is not loss, it is clearing. Heaven does not pour new wine into old wineskins, it creates space. It dislodges what cannot stay in your next chapter. And yes, it can feel emotional, it can feel lonely, it can feel quiet. That's because the noise of the old season fades before the sound of the new one arrives. Chosen one, I know this pattern well. When I stepped into my own season of transition, it didn't arrive dressed in celebration. It arrived dressed in discomfort. I lost circles. I gained clarity. I released dreams that were too small. I let go of people I once thought were permanent, and at the time, I didn't understand it. It felt like subtraction. But in hindsight, it was preparation. God wasn't taking from me. He was making room for what had been promised. And I didn't see the magnitude of it until later. That's why I'm telling you this now. So you don't misinterpret a holy rearrangement as abandonment. It is not rejection, it is redirection. You asked for breakthrough, heaven heard it. And now, heaven is aligning it. But alignment often feels like tension before it feels like triumph. So, let me give you deeper markers, proof that a transfer is unfolding. unexpected clarity in decisions, sudden conviction about your worth, relationships shifting abruptly, resources appearing in unplanned ways, ideas coming with urgency, spiritual sensitivity increasing, hunger for purpose intensifying. These are the birth pains of elevation, and the most telling sign is when what used to satisfy you no longer feeds you. Because destiny requires appetite, transfer requires maturity, and heaven never places crowns on childish spirits. This morning, your rising was your declaration, "I am ready," and heaven responded, "Then it begins." But hear this, supernatural transfer does not arrive to validate ego. It arrives to fulfill purpose. It does not appear to make you look powerful. It manifests to make you effective. The assignment is bigger than applause. The calling is deeper than recognition. Transfer is never just about you. It is about who will be changed because of what is entrusted to you. And this is where humility and stewardship meet. The chosen ones rise not for entitlement, but for responsibility. Real transfer does not just increase what you have, it increases what you can carry. Chosen one, the reason you felt the pressure this morning is because heaven knows what you're about to hold. And pressure reveals capacity. If you were not ready, the pressure would have broken you. But you rose, and that rising was proof you are ready for more. So now we must move from recognition to preparation, because knowing a transfer is coming is not enough. You must anchor yourself so you can sustain it. Chosen one, now that you can recognize the signs of a supernatural transfer, we must prepare your spirit, because receiving is one thing, but sustaining is another. Many people pray for breakthrough, but few prepare for it. Heaven does not pour abundance into chaos, it pours abundance into alignment. So this next part is about preparing your inner world to match what heaven is about to release. Here is the first principle you must understand. Divine transfer demands capacity. You cannot hold a new level with an old mindset. You cannot receive greater without releasing lesser. Transfer requires space, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and sometimes physically. If you have been feeling the urge to declutter, simplify, detach, or disengage from distractions, that is not random. That is the Spirit pruning your capacity. Some transfers come as ideas, some come as connections, some come as opportunities, some come as resources. But all transfers require a vessel prepared to receive. Think of it like this. When rain falls, only the open container is filled. When favor pours, only the prepared soul can carry it. So, how do you prepare? 1. You anchor your identity. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop apologizing for your calling. You silence the internal narrative that says, "Who am I to believe for this?" Because heaven does not choose the qualified, it qualifies the chosen. And this morning, you proved something heaven already knew. You are not fragile, you are faithful. I learned this during my own transition. Long before doors opened, long before resources appeared, the Spirit confronted the way I saw myself. I was praying for elevation, but speaking like someone unworthy of it. And heaven cannot multiply insecurity, it multiplies identity. When I stopped talking like a victim and started thinking like someone entrusted, things shifted. The transfer didn't start when the blessing arrived. It started when my self-perception aligned with my assignment. That's the beginning of capacity. 2. You discipline your atmosphere. Chosen one, you cannot nurture breakthrough in an environment of doubt. Atmospheres matter. The voices you entertain matter. The content you consume matters. You need spaces that feed your faith, not drain it. If you feel the sudden urge to separate from gossip, negativity, or spiritual laziness, it's because heaven is maturing your environment before it matures your elevation. And listen, I know this is not easy. I have had to walk away from circles I loved, conversations that were comfortable, and habits that soothed my ego but suffocated my spirit. And every separation felt like loss at first, but later I saw it was protection. Transfer requires atmosphere. Elevation requires clean air. 3. You guard your language. Words shape reality. Words steer momentum. Words are invitations. The tongue can declare breakthrough or bind it. You must speak as someone who believes in divine timing, not doubt, not panic, not despair. This does not mean pretending everything is perfect. It means refusing to give darkness free advertising. It means speaking victory, even when emotions say defeat. It means training your mouth to partner with heaven, not fear. 4. You steward your morning. This is critical, because what triggered heaven this morning was not the act of waking up, it was the intention behind it. Transfer begins at the first breath of the day. The moment your eyes open, you set the trajectory. When you rise with awareness, you shift the atmosphere of your home, your schedule, and your spirit. Your morning is not a routine, it is an altar. What you did today, your quiet yes, was a seed. And tomorrow, you can water it. The next day, you can cultivate it. Breakthrough is not just divine, it is also rhythm. Heaven responds to consistency. 5. You embrace discomfort. Chosen one, hear this. Every transfer begins where comfort ends. You cannot carry new authority without growing pains. You cannot enter new territory without unfamiliarity. Discomfort is not evidence of failure, it is evidence of transformation. The cocoon looks like confinement to the caterpillar, but it is the birthplace of wings. Many run when discomfort arrives, but the chosen lean in, because where others see resistance, heaven sees readiness. 6. You cultivate gratitude, not as a cliché, but as a weapon. Gratitude shifts spiritual frequency. It interrupts anxiety. It disarms fear. It makes space for blessing because it acknowledges the giver. Gratitude is not denial of struggle. It is recognition of sovereignty. It is saying, I feel the weight, but I trust the one who holds the scale. And here is a truth I have learned personally. The fastest way to activate what is coming is to honor what already is. Now let me tell you something sacred. You are closer to breakthrough than you realize. You are nearer to acceleration than you think. You are standing on the edge of transfer that could manifest in days, not decades. How do I know? Because heaven never prepares a soul without delivering purpose. The pruning is proof. The pressure is proof. The internal shift is proof. If nothing was coming, nothing would be shaking. Preparation is heaven's way of saying, get ready, it's almost here. Chosen one. Don't miss this. Your life is not stagnant, it is pregnant. Your morning was conception. Your alignment is gestation. Your obedience is dilation. And soon, you will birth what has been forming in the unseen for years. Chosen one, now that you understand preparation and capacity, we must unveil something many never discern. Not all divine transfers look the same. The supernatural is not one-dimensional. Heaven has categories, distinct ways it releases provision, breakthrough, and elevation. And when you can identify the type of transfer occurring in your life, you stop resisting it, mislabeling it, or fearing it. You begin to partner with it. There are 4 primary transfers heaven releases to the obedient and the surrendered: financial transfer, spiritual authority transfer, relational transfer, and territorial transfer. Some people experience one, others experience them in stages, and a rare few step into all 4 in a compressed kairos season, where acceleration collapses time. Let's begin with the most misunderstood. 1. Financial transfer, heaven's redistribution. A financial transfer does not always arrive as cash in hand. Sometimes it begins as divine ideas, unexpected favor, debt, forgiveness, open doors, restored opportunities, or connections you didn't seek. People think financial transfer is about money, but money is only evidence. The true transfer begins in the unseen, where heaven removes what was draining you and increases what sustains you. I've lived this personally. There were seasons where income didn't change, but my expenses shrank supernaturally. Debts I feared were dissolved. Resources I needed were provided before I asked. Then, in time, revenue flowed. That is the pattern. First protection, then provision, then multiplication. If you've seen sudden reductions of unnecessary burdens, that's not coincidence. That's reallocation. The transfer may already be in motion. 2. Spiritual authority transfer. Mantles you didn't ask for. This transfer is subtle at first. You feel an increase in discernment, influence, clarity, conviction, boldness, inner strength. Where you once whispered, now you speak with assurance. Where you once second-guessed, now you simply know. This transfer is not loud. It does not announce itself. It settles, it clothes, it transforms posture before it transforms circumstances. For me, this transfer arrived in a quiet season. Not when I was winning, but when I was weary. I did not feel stronger, but afterward, people began saying, "There's something different about you." Authority often arrives disguised as perseverance. Heaven trusts those who refuse to break with those who will carry the mantle. And remember, authority is not about pride, it is about function. You are given influence for impact, not ego. 3. Relational transfer, guarded separation, and strategic alignment. This is the transfer most people misinterpret as loss. When heaven removes draining relationships, manipulative influences, hidden jealousy, or subtle sabotage, it feels like rejection, but it is protection. Heaven will never elevate you while you are surrounded by those who can't breathe at the altitude God is calling you to. Then, after pruning, comes alignment. Suddenly, mentors appear, divine connections form, loyal allies step in, partnerships strengthen. Support replaces sabotage. I've lived this too. I resisted separation until later I realized the silence of certain people was the sound of heaven closing a door, and immediately after, new voices entered, people who nourished rather than drained. Chosen one, if your circle is shifting, that is a transfer. Heaven is removing liabilities and positioning assets. Territorial transfer, occupation of new ground. This is the rarest and the most powerful. It is when heaven enlarges your influence, expands your reach, moves you geographically, promotes you, shifts you into new industries, or assigns you rooms you were once excluded from. This transfer is intimidating because it uproots the why. Familiar. It requires courage, it stretches identity, but territory is the manifestation of calling. When heaven trusts your stewardship, it entrusts you with land, literal or symbolic. I once resisted a move I did not want. I fought it, I prayed against it, yet nothing worked because it was not the enemy, it was God. Only later did I realize that the place I left had served its purpose, and the place I entered unlocked everything that followed. Sometimes, obedience feels like exile, but later you see, it was inheritance. Chosen one, here is the revelation. You may already be in the transfer, but because it didn't look like what you imagined, you didn't recognize it. Transfers rarely begin with applause. They begin with discomfort, with separation, with pruning, with redirection. And that is where many turn back. But hear this, heaven does not prune without purpose. It does not strip without strategy. It does not rearrange without reward. When you lose something in the natural, heaven is often clearing space in the spiritual. And when all four transfers converge, financial, spiritual, relational, and territorial, You enter what Scripture calls due season, a moment when what was planted in tears returns in abundance. You may feel tension now, but tension is evidence of transition. You may feel loss now, but loss is evidence of leveling. You may feel alone now, but loneliness is evidence of selection. You are not being reduced. You are being redistributed, not being punished, being positioned, not being overlooked, being observed. Heaven is midnight working while you morning rise. Chosen one, now that you understand the nature and categories of divine transfer, you must learn to discern the signs, the unmistakable indicators that heaven is not only moving on your behalf, but that manifestation is near. Because heaven never releases breakthrough without first releasing signals. These signals are not random, they are strategic, they are for the prepared, and when you know how to recognize them, you stop calling warfare attack and start recognizing it as evidence that blessing is imminent. You stop fearing disruption and begin interpreting it as alignment. You stop mislabeling spiritual pressure as failure, when in reality, it is the stretching required for enlargement. Here are the signs, sacred markers, that a divine transfer is no longer distant, but days away. 1. Sudden discomfort with what was once familiar. Before heaven elevates you, it disconnects you internally from the old. You may feel restless where you once felt comfortable, agitated by normal routines, dissatisfied with old environments, called away from circles that used to feel safe. This discomfort is not a sign you are lost. It is a sign you are outgrowing. Before I entered a major spiritual promotion, I remember feeling like my life no longer fit. The job I once loved felt limiting. The conversations that once entertained me felt empty. The friendships I clung to suddenly revealed their true nature. Heaven always changes identity before it changes environment. When you feel the pull to grow, it means expansion is already scheduled. Increased spiritual sensitivity and discernment. When breakthrough approaches, your perception heightens. You begin to notice red flags sooner, detect spiritual warfare faster, sense manipulation instantly, feel God's nudges clearly. This sensitivity can feel overwhelming at first, but it is evidence of preparation. I remember a season where my spirit felt raw, able to discern in seconds what used to take months. That refinement was not punishment, it was equipping. Heaven sharpens before it sends. 3. Isolation before elevation. Chosen one, hear this. Heaven isolates before it elevates. Not because you are being abandoned, but because you are being insulated. When you are about to be trusted with more influence, more responsibility, more visibility, more harvest, heaven removes noise so you can hear instructions. Some of your loneliest seasons are not evidence of rejection, they are evidence of selection. The ones God uses powerfully, He hides first. Unexpected resistance and unexplainable warfare. This is the sign most misread. We assume resistance means we missed God, or we're out of alignment, or we took the wrong step. But the truth is this: hell does not resist what does not threaten it. The presence of warfare is often confirmation, not contradiction. When your life suddenly intensifies, conflicts rise, unexpected bills hit, relationships fracture, old insecurities resurface, it is not random chaos. It is spiritual retaliation. Breakthrough is near when warfare increases. I remember stepping into a divine assignment only to face sudden attacks, emotionally, relationally, financially. I thought I misheard God, but later I learned the opposition was a sign the door was real. Heaven was opening, hell was reacting. 5. Accelerated alignment and rapid favor. This sign feels almost surreal. Doors open without you knocking, people help without you asking, resources come without you striving. You begin to see divine coincidences, supernatural timing, unexpected yeses, strategic introductions. You don't chase, things begin to chase you. This is heaven's signature. Favor accelerates right before manifestation. I've had seasons where opportunities I prayed for years arrived in weeks, once the transfer reached maturity. 6. Internal peace in external chaos. This sign is sacred. When breakthrough is close, you may feel chaos around you, but a strange calm within you. Not because circumstances improved, but because God whispered assurance. It is written in Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. He keeps the heart in perfect peace when the mind is stayed on him. This inner stillness is spiritual evidence. Peace is the receipt before the provision arrives. 7. Closure without explanation. This one hurts. Jobs end, people leave. Opportunities fall through. Plans collapse. And you receive no apology, no clarity, no closure. But closure is not always verbal. Sometimes closure is circumstantial. Heaven closes doors you would have kept open out of loyalty or fear. When this happens, mourn, but do not chase. Closed doors are often answered prayers you forgot you prayed. 8. A quiet confidence you can't explain breakthrough is near, when faith becomes calm rather than loud, when resolve becomes still rather than frantic. When you no longer beg, you believe, because the battle shifts from will God to God is. Confidence precedes manifestation. Heaven waits for your inner agreement before releasing outer evidence. Chosen one. These signs are not random, they are prophetic footprints. When they converge, discomfort, discernment, isolation, warfare, favor, peace, closure, confidence, breakthrough, is not just coming, it is imminent. But here is the deeper truth. The transfer does not begin when you receive. It begins when you transform. When your posture aligns, when your obedience matures, when your faith stabilizes, heaven looks for readiness before release. You are closer than you feel, closer than you think, closer than the enemy wants you to believe. Chosen one, now we arrive at the threshold, the moment where preparation meets manifestation, where obedience aligns with divine timing, and where your posture determines the fullness of your supernatural transfer. This is the sacred closing of the journey we've been walking through together, and it is essential that you grasp this. Heaven's provision always follows readiness. 1. Stand in total alignment. The first step is internal alignment. Every seed you've sown, every act of endurance, every breath of faith, these have been noticed. But before heaven releases the transfer, you must agree with God in spirit, soul, and body. Ask yourself, am I ready to receive what I've been praying for? Am I ready to steward this blessing without fear? Am I willing to maintain obedience even after the breakthrough arrives? Alignment is not about perfection, it's about willingness. Your posture today dictates the velocity of the transfer tomorrow. I remember standing in a small, dimly lit room, praying for clarity over a long-term assignment. I wasn't perfect, I was tired, I was unsure, but I said yes. That single act of alignment accelerated my promotion faster than years of effort could have. Heaven responds to the posture, not the performance. 2. Activate your faith with declaration. Faith is activated when your mouth aligns with your spirit. Speak it out, proclaim it. Even if your circumstances say otherwise, speak your yes to God. I am ready for my divine assignment. I am chosen to inherit this blessing. The supernatural provision of heaven is manifesting in my life. These declarations are not empty words. They are spiritual levers that pull heaven closer to your reality. When you declare it, you agree with God's plan and signal readiness to the unseen realm. Even in my own life, there were mornings when I whispered audacious prayers that felt foolish. But the moment I spoke, angels moved. Opportunities aligned, the impossible became visible. Words carried the weight of eternity. Protect the transfer chosen. 1. Understand this. The supernatural favor you're about to step into is sacred. You cannot treat it casually. Protect it with spiritual vigilance. Guard your thoughts. Fear, doubt, and comparison are thieves. Guard your words. Complaining, gossip, or negativity can misalign your harvest. Guard your actions. Remain obedient, consistent, and intentional. Think of it like a seed. You cannot leave it exposed to weeds or predators and expect it to grow. Likewise, the blessing requires your stewardship. Your obedience is the fence that secures the fruit. 4. Embrace the unexpected. Breakthrough may not look like what you imagined. It may come in forms you cannot yet perceive. A door you didn't plan for may open. A conversation you almost skipped may shift everything. Resources may arrive from directions that confound logic. Trust that heaven's timing is perfect. You may not see the full design, but faith sees beyond the horizon. Every strange or unexpected event is part of the blueprint of your transfer. I've seen favor arrive through people I didn't expect, at times when I was convinced all doors were closed. That's the supernatural. It always surprises you in alignment with God's plan. 5. Maintain gratitude and praise. Chosen one. A key to holding the supernatural transfer is gratitude, not just after receiving, but before it manifests. When you praise in advance, you activate joy that attracts provision. You shift your spiritual atmosphere from limitation to abundance. You invite heaven to move with speed because praise opens portals. I recall a morning when I was exhausted and financially dry, yet I began the day declaring, "God, I thank you for what I cannot yet see." By evening, doors I didn't know existed had been opened. Gratitude turns expectation into reception. 6. Step boldly when opportunity appears. This is the final piece. Once heaven signals, move boldly, fearlessly, deliberately. The supernatural is rarely passive. It requires action. Say yes when opportunity knocks. Trust when the pathway seems unclear. Move forward, even if the timing feels imperfect. The universe and the enemy will test your courage in these moments, but every step you take in alignment is a step that shifts your timeline. Every action in faith confirms your readiness and solidifies heaven's release. Remember your identity. Through this entire process, never forget who you are: chosen, anointed, favored. The blessings coming are not just rewards for effort, they are affirmations of your divine identity. You were appointed for this moment. You were trained for this transfer. You were positioned to receive it exactly now. When fear whispers, remind yourself, this is your season. When doubt pressures your mind, remember, heaven has prepared this for you. When delay tempts you to despair, hold the truth that divine timing is always precise. Closing prophetic declaration. Chosen one. Hear me clearly. Your rising this morning was more than survival. It was a signal to heaven that you are ready. Your endurance, your obedience, your whispers of hope, they were recorded in the courts of heaven. The spiritual transfer you've been praying for, the promotion, the alignment, the supernatural provision, it is already moving toward you. But it requires your continued posture, readiness, faith, obedience, gratitude, and bold action. Today, do not underestimate the power of your quiet yes. The simple act of continuing to trust, to move, and to believe has already shifted your timeline. What you have been anticipating is now knocking at your door. So rise with intention, speak with confidence, walk in faith, and when the manifestation arrives, receive it with the dignity and gratitude of one who knows. You are the chosen one, the anointed one, and heaven's provision is now your reality. The supernatural transfer has begun, and nothing will stop what God has ordained. Chosen one, as we draw this sacred moment to a close, hear this clearly. What you began this morning has set a ripple of heaven in motion. The unseen realm is aligned with your obedience. The doors of supernatural transfer, divine favor, and breakthrough are already opening, and you are standing at the exact kairos appointed for your destiny. Know this, anointed one. Your rise was not unnoticed. Every whispered prayer, every quiet act of faith, every moment you chose to stand against doubt and fear has been recorded in eternity. Heaven is responding. Angels are dispatched. The atmosphere is shifting. The assignment that once felt distant is now converging upon your life, orchestrated by the hand of the Almighty. So now, rise fully in awareness of who you are. A vessel chosen, a warrior anointed, a testimony in motion. Let gratitude saturate your spirit. Let faith breathe through your every step. Remain aligned with the flow of the anointing. Do not question the timing. Do not underestimate the power of your yes. What has been set in motion cannot be stopped. I prophesy over you, chosen one. Supernatural provision will manifest. Favor will surround you. Doors that were long closed will swing wide. And the breakthrough you have been awaiting will arrive with precision. Your obedience has positioned you for elevation. Your persistence has made you visible in the courts of heaven. Receive this moment with confidence and surrender. Speak life over your day, your purpose, and your destiny. The Spirit of God is with you. The transfer has begun. Step forward, anointed one, and let your faith move what only heaven can move. If this message resonates, type Amen as a declaration of alignment and readiness. Share this word with others who are called, and step boldly into your divine assignment. Heaven saw your rising. Never forget, your obedience is never wasted.